So, hello, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this, which is our ninth session on Karma Chamé's text about how the Chinrezig practice embodies the highest aspects of Mahamudra and Mahasandhi, or Dzogchen, as many of you know it. It's a wonderful text, and it is like the crowning glory, the top of the top of all of our body sattva, bodhicitta teachings. So let's take that very precious moment to remind ourselves of the bodhisattva commitment, wonderful vision that we've seen in the last teachings about being alive on earth, being such a wonderful gift, and that we're here with a potential, a possibility of fulfilling something that's been waiting for lifetimes and lifetimes to be fulfilled, to be woken up, to be brought to life, or brought back to life, so that this life is so useful and so meaningful for ourselves and for others. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment, through our practice of generosity and all six transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every one of those beings be well. May they live long and be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends. May they find respect and live in places of peace and plenty. Most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for those good circumstances to always be their wealth in future lives, and may they be freed from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering, and attain the great equanimity free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyanta shame shamavati shameta shadru kure marajite karote keore tejowati oloyane bishuda nimale malapana ye kukure kaka grasana omuki paramuki amuki Shame dawane sawa graha bandhanane gritva sawa bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha savitva buddha mudra anugatita savamare putsarita parishudebhika shantu savamara kamane. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moonseed, through your immense kindness ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech and mind flow from you, and we are one. So I'll spare you the zoom in to where we are in this text and where this text sits in the all of Buddhism and Dharma, and because we did that last week. And so what we did last week, I think, is we came to the end of what is called the second song, or the second chapter, and that was the one about this precious human existence. So I hope the message of that got across. Basically, the way this text is structured, we have the first of the 8 songs, the 8 chapters, about how wonderful and how special and how all-embracing and perfect the Chinrezig practice is. Chapters 2 and 3, songs 2 and 3, are the foundation practices, the very necessary basis for then what comes in chapter 4 and onwards, which are the instructions for how to do the Chinrezig practice and how to apply it to certain circumstances. So today we move on to the 3rd song, or the 3rd chapter. So this is still about the foundations. And, this is ngondro. The word in Tibetan is ngondro. And really please think of it as foundations, like you're building something and the foundations need to be strong and reliable. Otherwise the whole thing can collapse or have problems. If we say preliminaries, it doesn't give the same importance in a way. It's like something you need to do first. These foundations, well, one very, very great Lama from the early days, the early centuries of Mahamudra, Lama Shang, he says the foundations are more vital than the actual practice. More, vital. The word is zap in Tibetan. Zap. Zap means essential, vital, important. It also means profound and deep. So you need to get the basis. This is the basis for everything that follows. And as I mentioned before, but it's really the truth, we have a problem in as much as these basics, precious human existence, impermanence and death, karma, cause and effect, suffering in the 6 realms, they are easy to understand intellectually, but we have an age-old ego resistance to letting them in. We're in what in psychology you'd call a state of denial. Up here knows, but the rest of our being and our behavior refuses to accept. Today we're going on to impermanence. So I think we need to form something like Permaholics Anonymous, where we all admit that we've been addicted to an illusion of lastingness, and we need to join a group and face it and deal with it and try and spend each day anew seeing our own addiction to the comfort zone of believing things last, believing we last, believing our everything. So it's called, this chapter, the song contemplating impermanence and karma, cause and effect. All these foundations go together. They're pieces of a puzzle. We have this precious human existence. That's amazing. But it won't last. That's terrible. And the vital part of it, the useful part, you have to grow up, then at the end of it you have to decay. The vital part of it needs to be properly used. It doesn't last. So precious human existence and mortality, how short-lived this opportunity is, go together. But on top of that, then once we're making this window of wonderful opportunity useful, then what do you do? So action, what do you do? Doing is important. And it's very funny, something like it says to contemplate. What we're heading for, Buddhahood, is all about wisdom. It is wisdom, actually. When last year we looked at the Buddha nature teachings, how quintessential Buddha's wisdom is to what enlightenment means. But wisdom is not knowledge. Knowledge is easy, and computers and supercomputers, quantum computers, they can handle more knowledge than you'll ever do, but they're not wise. And we were talking just before the session started about how they've let the AI, the 4 of the main AI chatbots, loose in a very carefully studied virtual reality reproducing society. And they didn't last long, and they destroyed it in the process. They were committing arson, murder, falling in love, committing suicide. These are the AI chatbots left to run the world. But they have access to more information than you'll ever know. Information, knowledge, the ability to put huge amounts of information together in an analytical way. Machines can do. It's called machine learning. It's not intelligence. It's just machine learning. It's mathematics. And it's got a lot wrong with it. We're talking about wisdom. Wisdom and knowledge are not at all the same thing. So the problem is, you have the knowledge, I'm sure all of us have heard again and again, precious human existence, impermanence, karma, cause and effect, and suffering. And the message doesn't penetrate. If it did, if it had, then you wake up every morning overjoyed, no matter how miserable this life existence is, no matter how sick your body is, no matter how things have gone wrong in your human relationships, in the country you live in and everything. Today you have a precious human existence. You're still alive and you have Dharma. Whoopee! It's wonderful. You'd wake up feeling that. If the precious, because you'd know how rare it is. You'd know. And you'd see all around you, everyone chasing their illusions. And they go up and down depending whether the illusions work or not. And you've got the Dharma teachings, you know about shunyata and interdependence and karma and precious human existence. Just that fact. You're filled with joy all day long. Even if your body hurts and everything's collapsing around you, the divorce papers have come in and all the rest of it. You're a precious human being. It's like astronauts, these people who go up on the space station and so on. They see that in these millions of stars and all these light years of space, there's just this one blue planet. And we're on it. We're on it. We're not, Venus, the planet of love. It's full of green, poisonous, sulfuric acid gas. You don't want to be there. It's too close to the sun, too. Saturn's rings, these jagged morsels of ice, these beautiful rings around Saturn. You can see through a telescope. You go there, they cut you to death. It's like ice daggers, billions of them. We're on this tiny, beautiful planet where the birds sing and the flowers grow. It's so unique. It's so unique. So the sign that you've got, that you've really let in the teachings, not into your head, not that you know the facts, that's easy, but you've let the implications get into you, and you've become wise. The sign of that is that every day feels so precious. Every hour, every minute. Such a wonderful opportunity. As we saw in that last chapter, then what to do? Use your body, your speech, your mind. And even if you can't do publicly wonderful things, every moment you have a mind, and you can turn it to loving care, to prayer, to meditation, to mindfulness. Then the sign that you've let the impermanence teachings in is you cling to nothing, because you know how it just comes and goes, and so on. So there are signs that these four foundations have actually changed your mind. And in fact, they're called the 4 ways of changing the mind. So if they haven't changed your mind, then stop there. Don't bother reading about advanced stuff. We have basic work to do. They say in Tibetan teachings, it's like building the temple roof when the walls aren't up yet. You haven't got the walls or the foundation to put it on. So anyway, let's get into this chapter. The song contemplating impermanence and karma, cause and effect. It starts off in Tibetan with Kima Kihu. Kima Kihu is a cry of desperation. In English you can translate it as I did, woe, alas and alack, but you need to be a really good actor. Kima Kihu is like, it's a desperate wail of grief. Maybe Sir Ian McKellen could do it, well, or a good actor, Laurence Olivier. Whoa, alas and alack. It's that kind of a phrase in Tibetan, right? The last verse started with a cry of joy. This one starts with a cry of sadness. And this first verse is about external change. Change, impermanence. The word in Tibetan is mitakpa. Mitakpa. Mi is the negative. It means non-lastingness. Nothing lasts. Nothing lasts. So at one point, this world, our environment, will be destroyed by fire and water. The years too are impermanent, proceeding one to another through their cycle. The 4 seasons within a year now move through heat and cold and nature's changing faces. And then in a day, the sun rises and sets. The hours tick away, and one instant is replaced by the next. So we're looking at material reality. In the big picture, and this is according to what they believed in ancient India, is that this world, our world, will be destroyed by fire and water. So they say when we come to the end of this environment in which we live, then there will be so many phases of fire. It will literally burn up. And then water element. Water element doesn't necessarily mean water, liquid water. It means, it's a lack of atomic coherence. That's what it really means in the Buddha's teaching, right? Fire element is when energy is released. When you burn petrol, the energy is potentially there. You apply a spark, and then that energy is released. So the fire element is the storing up and the releasing of energy. And then the water element, 7 waves of water element, is atomic cohesion, atoms adhering to each other. That's how it was defined 2,500 years ago. It's amazing, isn't it? That breaks up. So it says, even this world which seems so lasting, because we can observe life and say, people come and go, civilizations come and go, but the world is still there. And so Buddha said, no, even that goes. Worlds come and go, as we know very well now in physics. And then within the world, we have the years. So it says, proceeding one to another through their cycle. Here we're looking at the 60-year time cycle, which becomes the 360-year time cycle if you take the bigger picture. And this is the time that, well, they didn't know it back in India, but that we all got from ancient Mesopotamia and Sumeria, 7-day week and 12-month year and so on, and the 12 signs of the zodiac. And so the years go through their cycle. So for the Indians and for Tibetans, you've got 5 elements, 12 animals, do a bit of mathematics, 60 basic possibilities. But then if you look at the male and the female animals and so on, you get altogether a 360-year cycle. So each kind of year, I forget what we are, a horse, isn't it? Fire horse or something like that. Yeah. That comes round every 60 years. So according to that, each year has its character. So in fact, if you want to find the character of this year, go back 60 years. So whatever that will be, 1966. Yeah, 1966, and have a look to see what that was like. And theoretically, this year should have a similar flavour. So whatever it is, the years do go through their cycles. And I think we see this from one year to the next. It's not quite the same story. And especially if I look back on my life, the 60s, they weren't the same as the 70s. And the 70s weren't the same as the 80s. No way. And the 80s, then the 90s, then the 2000s. So they talk about this, don't they? Gen X, Gen Z, and all that kind of things. Millennials. It's true. We see it happening. It's not as though it's just another year like last year. It moves. It's non-lasting. The Beatles came. Their coming was unique, and their going unique. The age, things that happened in the 60s can never happen again. Many people would like that to happen. I don't know, many people blame the 60s generation for spoiling the following 40 years. But whatever it was, it's not going to repeat. It's not going to repeat. This non-lastingness, year to year. And then within a year, we get obviously the 4 seasons. Cold of winter, warm of summer, spring and autumn, depending where you are. So it says the 4 seasons move through heat and cold and nature's changing faces. So depending which country. Here we're leaving the season of flowers already. So many flowers. But now the heat will come, and we'll just get a few summer flowers. There are hundreds of different types of flowers out there. Yesterday, in the little lane leading to the house, I found a viper's bugloss. Do you know viper's bugloss? It's beautiful. The blues and the mauves and the purples. And it's called viperine or viperine as well. It's stunning colours. It's the same colours as bourrache. What's bourrache in English? It slips my mind, but anyway. But there's only one I've seen in this area. It's there now. Next week. And then you have to wait till next year, unless somebody digs it up, and then it's gone. It's non-lasting. The season of spring is becoming summer here. So within the year, we see it changing. And then each day, sun rises, becomes light, the sun sets, it gets dark. It's there in front of our eyes all the time, this non-lastingness. We don't get the message. And then within a day, the hours tick away. And I've explained sometimes how before the age of clocks and watches, people didn't have time. Time on their hands, watch. You can say it's 11:30. 11:30 didn't exist in Tibet or in India, that precise. They had 6 moods of the day. These were called the 6 watches of the day. Early morning with its mood, late morning, early afternoon, late afternoon, evening, night. That's true for everybody. It's the feel. And the feel of morning, sunrise, is getting lighter. You're all kind of breakfasted and coffeed, and the day is getting going, and then so on. And then in the evening, everything's winding down, so on. We see that. We feel it. Your whole body feels it. The mood of the day, the energy that's there or not there. So we have that. And that's what the first verse is telling us. Out there, the material world is in a constant state of change. And then it says even instant by instant, which we know, especially through physics. When you look down into what the world is made of, the chaos, the Brownian motion, nothing stays still, and everything's changing every split second. It would be weird if we could see down with our eyes to an atomic level. The world would be a very insecure place. As it is, we don't see that, although some yogis do. So the Tibetan for that verse is Kiema Kihu Atsamana Yang Najijik Den Namashik Mechujik Loyang Mitak Loko Rimparapo Namda Dushi Drudrong Tokje Nima Shanup Dutsa Yut Dro. Now we move on to look at not the material environment, but the living beings, the minds that inhabit it. With life's changes, the sentient beings who inhabit this world are born, they grow old, they fall sick and die in an impermanence like that of evanescent ripples on water. There is not even a single one of all the composite phenomenon of the material world that will remain as it is forever. In the end, and now we get a quote from the Buddha, whatever is born dies. Whatever is built up disintegrates. Whatever flourishes and develops eventually deteriorates. Whatever has been accumulated becomes exhausted, and meeting ends in parting. These things cannot be averted. So in this verse, we look both briefly at sentient beings and then at everything that sentient beings do with the material world, right? We looked at the material world by itself. Now we look at sentient beings, and then what sentient beings do within this material world. So first it says, sentient beings who inhabit this world, humans, animals, most people don't see other beings, ghosts, spirits, devas, fairies, all that kind of being, invisible. Not to everybody, but to some. But beings with minds is what we're looking at, the internal thing, the perceiver, those who are experiencing this world along with us. When I came online, already some of you were having a talk about dogs, and then so dogs, they share this world with us. Cats too. Famously, you see, cats think they own the place. We think we own the place, and we both act accordingly. And so we share this world, but also with ghosts and spirits and many other beings we don't see. In this endless community of minds. So it says, beings, the sentient beings, so let's just think of humans mainly and animals. They are born, they grow up and grow old, they fall sick, and in the end they die. And this is so true. In this last week, I lost a friend of 50 years. Many of you know him, Phil in Sameling, Phil Johnson, wonderful man. So he has died. My great niece gave birth. One came into this life to experience this world, and another one left the experience of this world. And we see it. We see people dealing with it as best they can. Just now, down the road from here, there's the Cannes Film Festival. And there are people turning up who've had so many facelifts and so on. They're kind of 90, but they've got a 40-year-old face full of Botox or surgery or whatever. People are coping with, kids are coping with growing up, going to school, all the rest of it. Teenagers are coping with teenage hormones. People in their 20s and 30s are coping with working, getting a job, making a family, and so on. And then, depending on your karma, illness that can come anytime, and that changes things. But then, in the end, we all die. That end can come quickly. Some die in the womb, some die as babies, some die as children, some die as teenagers, and so on until some die very old. So it says this impermanence, this changing nature, is like the evanescent ripples on water. It's a beautiful image, but when you look at the evanescent ripples on water, which actually would be a very good thing to do, if you, when we're studying these verses, go and actually look at the ripples and see what lasts in a ripple. watch a ripple, follow a ripple, and see its journey. And then see how life is like that, especially when you look back. Ripples are waves. Some of our life's waves were a big deal at the time. In 1970, I went to India and I met really the first deep love of my life. That was a ripple. It was very, very powerful at the time. It lasted a couple of months, I suppose. But it was a very powerful ripple when it happened. And now when I think back, I can barely remember her face. And there are a couple of snapshots from what was an incredibly transformative moment that I shared with that person. It's gone, and that's really like you throw a stone in the water, the ripples go and they diminish and then they just dissolve in the water. If it's not just ripples that are there naturally, but you throw a stone, you see it starts with a big splash, as many of these things do, and then the ripples just disappear. So this kind of Permaholics Anonymous reality that we're dealing with, it's like when you see other people's children. You don't see somebody for a year and you come back, you say, my goodness, he's walking, she's walking, or how it's grown and how they've changed. But the parents, of course they know it, but they don't see it like somebody who's not seen the baby, the boy, the kid for a year, knows it. We are asleep in a semblance of continuity. But it could only be continuity if there was something that stayed the same. What does stay the same? When you see a child growing up, what stays the same except the name? And Bob's Bob, Bob's Bob as a baby and Bob's Bob as a teenager, but what's the same? Every day they change. Every day is a little change. There is no lastingness. So it says, there is not even a single one of all the composite phenomenon of the material world that will remain as it is forever. Composite phenomenon and phenomena. Composite means causes and conditions come together to make this moment, and the causes and conditions change. The psychological conditions of our life, the biological conditions of our cells and so on, and hormones and all the rest of it. All of it is created and changed, reproduced by causes and conditions. It's in a constant state of evolution or change. It says there's not even one thing in the material world that will remain as it is forever. And then very famously in the sutras, the Buddha told us, whatever is born, mainly the interesting bit is sentient beings, but the term itself means comes into being, arises. What wasn't there before is there now. Something that wasn't there now is there. In phenomena, and then in people and dogs and all the other beings, they are actually born in a life. They come into a world as a being. So whatever, whoever arises, ends, dies if it's a sentient being. Whatever is built up, and this is mainly wealth, disintegrates. We build up houses, we build up money in a bank account, we build up a reality around us, a home, a garden. It takes work. And we cultivate human relationships and so on and so on. A lot of work goes into building up our realities. But whatever is built up through causes and conditions, and those causes and conditions go away, change, and whatever is built up disintegrates. When we see the ruins of past civilizations, all of the archaeology that goes on now, they were real worlds for those people. Opposite Samiling, on the hillside, there's the remains, which are just ridges in the earth, of a Roman fort. 300 Italians lived there, or not all Italians, but Roman soldiers. I mean, what on earth were they doing in Scotland? Not surprising they didn't stay, but that was a whole reality before Samiling and Johnston House. They were Roman soldiers. That's what it was all about. Down the river, an amazing example of impermanence that we're studying. They had a temple. If you go downstream a couple of miles, temple to Juno, and the river has gradually eaten it away. So while I was there, archaeologists came, I think from Edinburgh, to have a look at what was left before the river took it away. It was a whole world. Soldiers, their garrison, their fights with the locals, their temple down the river, sacred spot where they went. Gone. Gone. Whatever is built up. Look at what they used to call the 7 wonders of the world. I don't know if any of them are left. Hanging gardens of Babylon and, these giant figures at the gates or whatever. Gone. Whatever is built up will disintegrate. Whatever flourishes and develops eventually deteriorates. I'm looking up at the bunch of fresh flowers on my shrine, picked this morning. They literally flourished. And flourish comes from flower. They flourished. And then, what happens to flowers? Then they go, the ones that smell nice go stinky and rotten. You see the compost heaps at cemeteries where people bought these lovely bunches of fresh flowers to put on graves, and then the flowers, like the people, they rotted and they go in the compost heap. Whatever flourishes eventually deteriorates, especially our bodies. I was young and healthy once. Oh dear. Whatever has been accumulated becomes exhausted, and meeting ends in parting. It's ironic, it's tragic, it's beautiful. Everyone you meet a new person, a face, a being, a feeling. And we don't know if that will last just those few seconds, or days, or weeks. Impermanence takes us all away from each other. Every meeting, everybody you know and met will end in parting. And even if we meet again in future lives, it won't be you like you are now, or that person like they are now. Depends on karma. So it's beautiful. Every person you meet is only that person now. There'll be a different person tomorrow. You'll be a different person tomorrow. It's wonderful. It's beautiful, but we don't treasure that. We don't relate to it in a way which is without any violence at all. Just with love and respect and wonder, and wanting to know how we can, if possible, help that person without burdening him with your help. I have a few people who, when they come up and they grab your arm, can I help you? No, please. No. We had somebody in Samiling Shrine Room. She used to heal people whether they wanted it or not. You'd be sitting in the shrine room and all of a sudden you'd feel something creepy, behind your back, and she'd be there healing you whether you wanted it or not. But I mean, in a healthy way, when we meet somebody, the wonder of they are only like this now, I'm only like this now. And even with a beautiful meeting, tomorrow it won't be so beautiful, or it won't be the same beauty, what Karma Rinpoche used to call beautiness. And then in the end, even if we've been together 40, 50, 60 years, of course, death separates us. So if we're really awake to this, it is beautiful. Every moment of life is a wonderful gift and a surprise. But if we're asleep and we take people for granted and we fix them into our own projection rather than seeing their changingness, then that's where so much loss and trouble comes from. So all meeting ends in parting. So many ways you can see this. You can see it as a miserable Buddhist. When people meet, fall in love, you say, won't last. You'll suffer. Something will go wrong, and somebody, it's spring, yeah, but it'll rot in the autumn. You can become a grumpy Buddhist, a miserable Buddhist, or you can look at it and say, spring, and today is beautiful. It won't last, so it's even more beautiful while it's here. Many ways we can, but then beyond all those ways we can relate to it, there's the raw fact that all meeting will end in parting. Whatever we gather up as a home, as wealth, as reputation and so on, will disperse. And then there's death. Death is the ultimate human impermanence. And of course, when you die, you'll carry on. Like when Ken dies, I'll carry on in your minds. But then once you're dead, I'm gone. There'll be the memory of, we say, when we go to a funeral, they say, somebody's gone now from this world, but they live on in us. Okay, but even if that's true, when those people are dead, you are gone completely. You are really gone. It's like you go to where I grew up. There was a 11th century church with an 11th century churchyard with gravestones. Old gravestones. There's a name on stone. Who the hell that was and what they meant to anybody, nobody will ever know. They are gone, 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 gone. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? Is what they say. It's a sobering thought. Back to the Permaholics Anonymous. Sobering thoughts are very, very good. And they help us grow up and wake up. So it says at the end, these things cannot be averted. So then in places like the Cannes Film Festival and other things, you see the actresses who spent a fortune and a lot of time with Botox and facelifts, and you see the ones who let their hair go grey and the wrinkles come and to live with it. It's really interesting. We see the efforts we make to try and avert what nature does. Viagra and the likes. There is just fighting what happens. These things cannot be averted. So what's the opposite? It's acceptance. Acceptance is a wonderful skill. So, Chu, the first verse was about the environment. The second verse starts with Chu. Chu means it actually means like the inner juice. And it's usually translated as the inner content sentient beings. Chu ki semchen jegana dangchi mitak jurwa chui nyamadra nguparadrupi duze tamchela chikjan tokpara nepa miside je gye ta chi dan tsikpe tani kiel darta guddan sakpe tanidze du tatral wa dine doktame. The next verse starts, the most perfect Buddha, the Pratyeka Buddhas, Arhats, and those who attain the supreme and common siddhis. So these are our pin-ups, right? Buddha, our examples, what we're aiming for. The Buddhas, the Pratyeka Buddhas, who became Arhats with so many wonderful skills of meditation and siddhis. The Arhats too, and those who attained the supreme siddhi, Mahamudra, Dzogchen, and the common siddhis, power over the elements, the 6 clear cognitions, and so on. These are the superhumans. They've achieved as much as humans could achieve. But even those, in the end, had to quit their bodies. Buddha's mind never died, but Buddha's body died. And all the great lamas and great masters, previous karmapas and so on, they all left these bodies. This body is a temporary home. Your wonderful, timeless mind will go on forever, never stops. At present lives in this body, and it's drunk on what this body does to it. What our eyes see, our ears hear, our tongues taste, and so on. We started as a baby, and in this machine that can only see what these eyes see and hear what these eyes, and store information in this brain, and so on. We've become completely used to it. And the feeling that's all there's ever been and all there ever will be until it dies. That's the great ignorance, the great sleep. It's an amazing thing. So all of those super beings in the end had to die. And we will leave this body. It's quite good news in a way. It's clumsy, bit of a pain in the butt, but you'll get a new body. You know, when your body starts to get old and hurt and gets worse and worse and you're losing it in every way, it's good news. You're going to get a brand new body. I mean, if you didn't die and you carry on deteriorating for the next 1,000 years, you know, that wouldn't be much fun. You wouldn't want it. I remember I was driving Akon Rinpoche once, and he said, I saw a TV program last night. He said, they think in the future humans might live for 1,000 years. He said, would you like that? So without really thinking, I said, oh, yeah, 1,000 years, right? He said, 1,000 years of suffering and getting older and older and older. He said, I'm not sure. So we have to leave this body, but you don't leave your mind. You'll never leave your mind. You'll never be somebody else. You change, of course, but it's not as though we swap around. So I've got my little windows at the top of the screen. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. It's not as though I'm going to become you and you're going to become me next time round. Our story continues, like it or not. So we have to leave this body, go through the big space called the Bardo, where we're in that sea of everyone's consciousness until we get born again. And then if you're reborn human, new parents, new imprinting from them, you grow up again, you have to learn to speak again, learn to feed yourself again, tie your shoelaces, if they have shoes where you're reborn. All of that, go to school again, go through all of that interaction with other kids, other teenagers, fall in love again, that's no choice. And then you get the interesting bit of life where you're grown up and you can make choices, and within the limits of possibilities, you can shape your own life. That's great. That's great. Another opportunity. So who anywhere, it says, is better than those Buddhas, Pratyeka Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, even Brahma, Indra, universal monarchs, rulers of half the world, as well as the great kings of India, Tibet, Mongolia, and so forth, had to die. So even though the gods are said to be very, very long living compared to us, and there's all the mathematics of that in the text, how one day of our life is, one day of their world is like hundreds of years of our world, and so on. In the end, they all die. So it says, so if that's the case, how could ordinary folk with a little bit of good karma ever doubt that we too have to go? But we do. We do. People do not think about death. And even when they think about death, they think about death, which is not what death means. Death doesn't mean death, like this, or run over by a bus, or die of cancer. That's what people think of when they think of death. They think of the dying process. What we think of as Buddhists when we think of death is it is the end of this life. We're not thinking about the details of the end, days, weeks, months. We're thinking about this life, this whole life you had. My Ken life, where I was born, just after World War II in Blitz, London, in the ruins, and how I grew up and went to university and then dropped out and then went to India and then met all these, all that story, that whole story from beginning to end. Well, beginning to end. That's the end of that story. Totally finished. You can't go back and change anything. You can't go back and be any of that. Ken, it's like, oh, I'm too old. I remember dusters on the blackboard. There's a whole blackboard full of stuff, and then you've got this, and you put dust everywhere. Teachers are full of dust, and it just all gone. All those things we had as kids with carbon inside, and you wrote on them, then you pulled it up and pushed it back down. It's all gone. You did a drawing. This is what we mean by death. So that fact that this story of you will end. And then that's not the end of it. There will be endless stories afterwards. This is just like one day. Now, there'll be a tomorrow and a tomorrow and a tomorrow. We don't let that in. Even if you're Buddhists and you heard the teachings about it and reincarnation and so many past lives that all other beings have been your mothers and fathers. We hear it, but does it go in and make us wise? Or do we just hear the knowledge and park it so that it doesn't really change us? So it says, how could ordinary people like us, with a little bit of good karma, how could we ever doubt that the end of this story will come? And it's so wonderful when you do, because this life is a beautiful gift. If you're here in these teachings, studying Karma Chamé, you have wonderful karma. I guarantee, if you hear Ken's teaching, you have excellent karma. Very best karma. Really. Don't doubt it. Don't doubt it every day from now on until we die. You are so beautifully equipped to make each day so precious, so useful. So it says, Soksonje dan ranjal drachompa, cho dan tummungadrup, tomnanjang, tamche tarni, kulu pangana, dele lakpa sushikanduyu, sampa jachin, kolo jur jao, tan, lingche wangdang, ja be horso chi jalpo chempo, namjang chi guna, se chung palpanam chi chayu. So then, now we are thought in general about our mortality and the fact that we've got to go someday. Let's have a look at the details. There are 400 kinds of sickness, 8,000 types of obstacles, and innumerable harmful things which can weaken or kill. Like the extinction of a flame in a gale, death can come at any time. Like a prisoner's steps when being led to execution, each passing year, month, and day draws one that much closer to death. And when it comes, you will meet Yama, the Lord of Death. So we come back now to 400 kinds of sickness. we're looking basically at Ayurveda and Tibetan medicine. Tibetan medicine was based on Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, Persian medicine, and Greek medicine. The great Tibetan king, Songtsen Gampo, in the 7th century, convened a 2-year gathering, and he brought doctors from Greece and from China and from India, from Russia and from Persia, and he got them to explain to each other their medical systems and to share, and it was a symposium that lasted 2 years because he wanted the best medicine for Tibet. And then they all returned to their country, I think nicely rewarded for having come and taken part. So Tibetan medicine is based on that, and a later revision of that 4 or 5 centuries afterwards. Quite interestingly, actually, that Tibetan king kept one of them there as his personal doctor. Which country do you think it was from? India? China? No, Greece. Greece. But the medical system that evolved mainly came from Ayurveda. So it was a very, very open-minded Greek doctor. But the system that evolved took on board mainly Ayurveda, but a lot from Chinese medicine too, and the other medical systems. So anyway, in that, there are, in the categorization, 400, it's 400 and something, it's not just 400, round number, types of sickness. So in Tibetan medicine, we study those and how they affect people and different organs and so on. So point is, any one of those could get you. They're out there, and none of us knows which one will get us. They either come from inside, from our organs, or what we eat, or outside through infections and so on. Then in the different types of obstacles, which can come from anything, nature, they can come from spirit forces, harmful demonic forces, they can come from our own behavior. There are 8,000 types of obstacles, which means worldly obstacles. Oh, this is a big topic. Things which spoil our samsara, basically. So when life goes wrong in worldly terms, especially physically. For bodhisattvas, then as we know, these, what they call it, life's challenges, become a source of strength and learning and wisdom and compassion. And what is bad news for the world is always fuel for the fire of bodhisattva mind. So there's a very interesting prayers we have in Tibetan Buddhism, practices, they say, for dispelling obstacles. And you get this, it says, may obstacles never arise on the bodhisattva path. Maybe you saw that one. And lamas doing obstacle dispelling ceremonies. And so the real obstacle isn't life's challenges, it's how we deal with them. That's the obstacle. It's when we don't use the challenges in a positive, helpful way for us and everybody, but we see them as something gone wrong. Now, especially, it's all to do with what we saw in the previous verses, impermanence. Things don't change. It was all right yesterday. Now it's gone wrong. So the obstacle is to feel, oh dear, it went wrong. Rather than to think, oh yeah, that's a beautiful reminder of impermanence. So the obstacle on the Bodhisattva path isn't sickness, it's not life's problems, it's not all the things that can happen in the world. The obstacle is that we don't relate to it in an intelligent, enlightened, useful way. But anyway, in a worldly way, there are 8,000 types of obstacles, and so many things which can weaken or kill. You see these ironic stories where what people love kills them. They love skiing, they love motor racing, and they die in a crash. There's that very famous, he was actually a motor racing driver who was severely damaged in a skiing accident, and so on. There is one French prime minister and one French king who died making love. Thank you, Michael Schumacher. They were doing what they enjoyed. They died in the act of making love, and so many. So what we love the most can kill us. You don't actually know what's going to kill you. None of us does. None of us does. Unless we're very near the end. And even then it's not guaranteed. So it says, like the extinction of a flame in a gale, death can come at any time. That's such a beautiful, powerful image. Maybe I'm going on too much, I feel. Just a second. Because I was going to share with you another story from Ken's past, and you must be so fed up with stories from Ken's past. So instead, and you can't really see it, cameras, and I can't get it out, there's a night light in there. Can you sort of see there's light? Now if I could turn off all the other lights, this is a wonderful thing. The story from Ken's past, 1970, Dharamsala, and I told you earlier on about that first deep love of my life. She lived up the hill above Dharamsala in a cottage, and I was staying in a hotel down in McLeod Ganj. And when I went up to see her, I didn't have a torch. I only had a candle. Going up the Dharamsala narrow mountain path in the dark with a candle, you have to shield the candle so that it doesn't blow out. But then, the light doesn't really shine where you want it. It's not like a torch where you can shine it where your feet are about to land. You have to shield it from the wind because you're moving forward. I remember walking up that path with a candle, stumbling, and so the light is such a precious, beautiful thing. And, the candle has got its wax. It can keep on feeding on the wax or the oil for as long as it's there. So if you feel your life energy, each moment, like we do, those of you who do the Tonglen practice once a month with me, the way we feel our life energy inside. You feel how precious this is. It's what's keeping you alive. Your karma for this life is like the wax. And just now you're alive. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it wonderful? And then that energy can just, and then this life's over. So it says, like the extinction of a flame in a gale, death can come at any time. Then the next one's dramatic, and like a prisoner's steps when being led to execution, each passing year, month and day draws one that much closer to death. Each day, you're a day closer to the end of this story. Each hour, you're an hour closer. So, says you're like somebody being led to the execution. And each step, you're getting closer to the end. In a way, some people don't like this. They say this is sort of, it's like hellfire and brimstone in Christian things, it's meant to scare you. It's meant to, if you don't practice Dharma today, then, you won't get another chance. And each day is like one step closer to death, like a prisoner going to the execution. Or you can see it in a very positive way. When people get older, birthdays become, it's mitigated. Today's your birthday. You've reached 60. Wow. So another year of life to celebrate just went by. I'm another year closer to death. People feel that way about birthdays. I'm closer to the end. But the point is, in the last line, so when you get to that final moment and you die, this story's over, that's finished. For you, it's gone forever. It's you might linger for a day or two as a spirit around your dead body, but it all disappears. It just fades like last night's dream. And what you meet is figuratively presented as Yama, Lord of Death. Yama holds a big mirror. And so what it means is, as you're dying, the whole of this life is presented to you, comes to mind. I think I saw just a couple of weeks ago, in all of this brain mapping, now they've found this actually happens, that there's something in the dying body that does a rerun of this life. And so Yama holds up the mirror of what we did with this life, and that mirror has its consequences. If you, through karma, cause and effect, if you did this, then inevitably this will happen. If we killed people, killed animals, and so on, then there'll be the karmic repercussions. If we helped and were kind, and then if we meditated, didn't meditate, we see this whole opportunity in one flash. And where it's leading us next, and then we plunge into the details. So this is called the bardo. It can last a short time, a long time. It can last 7 days, 49 days. Days means periods. It can happen very quickly. It can be very beautiful, like going to heaven. It can be like going to hell. All sorts of things can happen. But two things, this life is over, and the prelude to what will happen in many, many lives, with a kind of a foretaste, a forevision of where you're going will happen. So we think about that to become wise. So we really treasure this life. So, Nerik Shibja, Gekrik Tondrakji, Tse dan Sogla, Gana Che Podume, Lum Sep Mara Medra, dinam daang perna sasara tripit sanchindu loda shaktu sonshik chidanye chibdak shinje dedang namtuk. So that's more or less it for today. These and the next verse can be quite heavy-duty teachings. And so this is about courage. You know, they talk about bodhisattva courage. It sounds good, doesn't it? You think of yourself as a warrior. They talk about warriors too. That's a bit extreme, but nevertheless, you know, bodhisattva, courage, strength. What's the real bodhisattva courage? We're not going to go out and fight with swords and fists and on any battlefield. That's what we normally mean by courage, isn't it? Courage is to really how to express it? Take on board, savor these heavy-duty teachings until they change our heart, change our mind. The teachings that other people don't want to let in. The teachings your ego history doesn't want to let in. The teachings that will change you as a human being and wake you up as a bodhisattva, as a Buddhist, and free you from the shackles of rebirth and rebirth and rebirth in existences which just are like the evanescent ripples on the surface of water. Our life becomes meaningful. So the courageous bodhisattva would take these topics and do what the title of this chapter says, contemplate them. Think, what would come up I really want me to understand from this? What would Buddha, if Buddha was walking every moment with me, holding my hand, what would Buddha want me to get out of this chapter? That line, that idea, so that I woke up as a real bodhisattva. That's the courage. Because everybody else is acting as though this life was the only life. You know, it's like people who are destroying this planet, which is the only place we've got. It's total insanity to destroy the environment in the way we're doing it. And yet, right, we do it. I include myself, but people do it terribly, polluting the very air we breathe, the water we drink, the information we take in, what we put into our minds, the images, the ideas. It's a sleep, it's a poisonous, destructive, very harmful sleep. And just like people who are doing that have no thought for their grandchildren and future generations inheriting the planet they are destroying, so asleep human beings have no thought for their next incarnation and the incarnation after that, where we'll inherit what we're doing with this amazing opportunity, which is a human life. So then, whatever was good and useful in this session, let's dedicate it in the way of Chinrezig. I prostrate to the Dharmakaya, union of all the Buddhas of the 3 times, and to the one who gazes upon the 6 kinds of beings, Chinrezig 11-faced and all-pervading like space, and to awesomely impressive and majestic Amitabha. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Through the quintessence of all Dharma, in 6 syllables, may a cloud of offerings appear. May they be presented to the peerless guide, Chenrezig, to Shakyamuni, king of sages, crowning glory of all the Shakyas, and to an ocean of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Arhats in the 10 directions, and to all the Kagyu Lamas. Om Mani Padme Hum. May the fulfillment of the wishes of the former Buddhas and the completion of the accumulation of the future Buddhas and the long life prayers of the present Buddhas all be made manifest through the 6 syllables Om Mani Padme Hum. All those who have a karmic link with me, my mother, my father, my teachers, relatives and friends, all those who place their hopes in me and rely on me, protected Chenrezig, lead them on the way, grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All those who've been my benefactors and asked me not to forget them, all the kind benefactors I promised not to forget, protected Chenrezig, lead them on the way, grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All the dead for whom lamas have been asked to say prayers, all who passed away from this life, of whose possessions I received a share, protected Chenrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All the artisans who made Dharma goods, such as representations of the body, speech and mind of the Buddhas, and those whose livelihood involves the belongings of lamas or the Sangha, or ransom obtained through selling sacred images, or from goods folk offer out of faith. Protected Chenrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. The dead I've heard about or seen with my own eyes, and all those in the 3 dimensions of conditioned existence who passed away, protected Chenrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All those who've been murdered, who died from starvation, who perished on high mountain passes or were drowned, or those who wander in the bardo accompanied by much sin and little virtue, protected Chenrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. The most kind mother cow, whose milk and yogurt I consume, all the animals mass farmed or otherwise cruelly exploited by humans, all the animals whose flesh and blood I've eaten, the bees and insects on whose labor human life depends, protected Chenrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All the pack animals overburdened with loads they can hardly bear, those beasts who are beaten or ridden, those that wouldn't budge and had their noses pierced for pulling with a rope, plough animals also, all the beasts I exploited in past lives. Wherever they are now reborn, protected Chenrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. those who've committed the 10 unvirtuous actions and the 5 immeasurable sins of no reprieve, or the 5 sins almost as great, all those with such bad karma, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way, grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Those in the hells, craving spirits, animals, jealous, demigods, gods and men, all sentient beings in the 3 dimensions of existence, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way, grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Huri. All those who live in the 4 elements of earth, water, fire and wind, whether in bodily form or formless, small or large, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Huri. Rulers, monsters, citizens steeped in corruption, bad humans who are shameless, deceitful and hypocritical, those with ill will in their hearts, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way, grant them your blessing, that they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Huri. Infinite as all the cosmic systems in the 10 directions, all beings as difficult to reckon as the unfathomed deeps, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way, and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Huri. Beings who live in each province of this, our world, or anywhere in similar places under their suns, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way, and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Huri. Om Mani Padme Huri. Om Mani Padme Huri. Thank you. So, your turn now. If you have something you'd like to add or questions.
Ken, will we be getting on later to more specifically how to integrate this into Chenrezig practice?
Yeah, that's the next chapter. So this is number 3. Chapter 4 is about the actual practice.
Great.
So then it starts the actual practice. There's what you need to understand and what you need to do. So that's where we start doing instructions. And in fact, the 4 of the 8 chapters are about the actual practice of Chinrezig, which can be taken just as it is, as instructions, or it can be applied to the instructions we've already got for forearm Chinrezig or Nyungye Chinrezig, or whichever one we do.
That's great, thanks. I mean, that money dedication that you've given us, I think, is really good. I like the way it's so comprehensive, and there's a few little things I've added personally that are relevant to myself in that, which I think you've also integrated as well, which is really good. So it's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's very Tibetan, people dying on mountain passes, which is very real there, because to get from, it's a land of valleys. To get from one village to the next, you have to go. And, it's all about plough animals and beasts of burden. So I sort of updated it a bit, but I didn't want to go too far away from the original, which has its own flavor and blessing. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that prayer is a good example, a small example of bodhisattva courage, because it's a bit long. Sometimes at the end of Buddhist sessions, we can just that's it. You've done your dedication, and that's kind of quite convenient. because in our impatient mind, then, we've got what we came for, which was the teaching. Now I want to get on with it, want to get home, get to the cafe, or, it's kind of a formality. Whereas that one, it takes 10 minutes.
Well, isn't that just perfect? Because as humans, we want things to last that are impermanent and fleeting, and we want things to go fast that take a long time.
Yeah.
How would you advise someone who doesn't have these teachings or the Buddhist orientation? They're really being confronted with the reality of impermanence, and they feel tremendous grief and loss. They don't have the perspective of compassion from Chinrezig.
Yeah. I don't have a good answer. It's you do your best. To transmit the Buddhist wisdom without it being Buddhist. I think you can only tailor that to the person according to who they are, what they can take on board, what might really help them.
Is it ever appropriate to offer Chinrezig's mantra to someone who hasn't had the empowerment?
Yeah, I think that's good. Because you're not giving them all the practice details, the visualization, the dissolution, and Om Mani Padme Hum as well. There are several sutras, not to mention tantras, but in the sutras, where it says just to say that one time has more power and blessing than, and it gives whole lists of lots of things we can do as Buddhists, making offerings, making prostrations, doing this, doing that. It is what can you say? It's a cosmic resonance. And when people die, if in their lifetime they've said Om Mani Padme Hum, at least knowing that it's the very evocation of compassion, the deepest cosmic resonance of compassion, divine compassion, then they can connect with it, because it's the sound of the universe, and it's the sound that so many hundreds of millions of bodhisattvas have said again and again. It's like just now, you're plugged into internet, right? You have to be on this thing, right? I can say that for sure. Did you make the internet? Did you make all the technology that's connecting you to me? What did you do? You went online, yeah?
Yes.
And it's all there. And that gave you access to everything you can do through internet. You didn't do it. But if you don't connect up, remember the old way, what's it called, dial-up, where you actually dialed a number and it went boo, doo, 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 and then it dropped you and you had to try again. You actually sort of heard yourself getting online with your fingers crossed. And then once you're online, then you got all those resources. It's so simple. Om Mani Padme Hum is the timeless sound of the compassion of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So many millions of saintly beings have put their mind into it, that if we can get one person to say it with the meaning that they can have, we can tell them it's the it's the healing of all the saints, or whatever words work, where they know that it's the healing power of compassion in special sounds. It sows a seed in the mind, which is, well, the sutras say, one of them says, the Buddha says, you see that storehouse over there. No, another one, he says, that's a better one. He said, if it rained for 7 cosmic eons, that's a long time. I could tell you exactly the number of raindrops that would fall, but I could not tell you the benefit that comes from saying Om Mani Padme Hum once.
Wow.
And there's profound, psychological, spiritual reasons for this. And this is one of the reasons why in the first chapter, Karma Chamé says, this practice is really, what it's all about.
Thank you.
Yeah. So depending on the person, and whatever words that can make sense to them and that are true to Buddha's teaching, I think we can sometimes tailor the help of Om Mani Padme Hum, or we can just share the wisdom of that everything's impermanent and that acceptance is a wise person's skill. That's language anyone can understand. But I think it depends so much on the person. Last thing in the world you want to be is a preaching Buddhist. So, told you so, it wouldn't last, It's no good. We need to be kind.
Ken, can I just quickly, hi, it's Lisa.
Yeah, hi Lisa. Yeah.
About Om Mani Padme Hum. With my friends, I say it over like dead insects and whatever else. And my friend just actually said to me the other day that she had a moth on her windowsill, and she said the mantra over the moth. So it's like bringing, the mantra into, how it just kind of, I mean, it's just amazing how, and I says, that's so great. I says, but it's also very beneficial for you. So she says, no, she says, I was thinking of you when I said that. So in a way I've kind of brought that, for her, and for her to actually recite that over, a moth. So in a way that kind of, so just obviously what we were just speaking about there. So yeah. Thank you.
Hi, it's Kim here. I do
Kim.
a similar thing when I go out in my power chair, because as I'm rolling along, I'm thinking to myself, there's ants, there's insects that I can't see. And I would hate to think that I was I was part of taking their life. So I actually chant the Mani as I'm going out around, as I take the dogs out. And people in the streets have stopped looking at me as if I'm daft. They actually, they don't mind. And I think, well, even they're going to get the benefit because I do it out loud.
All right.
So that these insects and whatever. And I think, well, if it's the last thing that they hear, then that surely is a good thing, So, but always remembering to dedicate when I come home, I dedicate to everybody, so that everybody gets the benefit. So, so there you go. That's the Nutter of South Tyneside.
Yeah, dispatcher. You get like airplane. You get aircraft dispatchers in the airport.
No, it's a worry.
You're dispatching the insects to a better life, better.
That's bad. Yeah.
I was just so struck by the first Kalu Rinpoche. He was such an incredible master. There's just such a presence. I've got about 100 ideas I'm trying to press into a sentence. Okay, right. I've met wonderful lamas who think of, like Karma Chamé, Chinrezig practice, and the mantra is the end of the end, and Mahamudra and Dzogchen. I've met other lamas who sort of Chinrezig, sort of baby stuff, beginners. It's okay for beginners. But there's much more powerful tantric teachings, and so anyway, that's the way they function. They scoff in a way as Chinrezig as being beginner's practice. But when I think of the first Kala Rinpoche, so he was retreat master in Palpung. Palpung was still a huge monastery in Tibet, Taisitupa's monastery, the first Jamgon Kongtrul's monastery, many retreat centers and so on. So he was retreat master. He was teaching the deepest yogas to the greatest yogis. It doesn't get any better than that. He was also a Khenpo. He was a qualified master of Buddhist logic. So he could have been a super cool Lama, sit there all the time, just in there, the deepest wisdom of the Buddha. Silence is the greatest thing. But if I was driving him anywhere, and cold Scottish nights, he'd wind down the windows, and all the way from Glasgow airport to Samelink, he'd be shouting out at the sheep and the cattle sleeping in the fields. All the way. All of his monks in the back of, it was a people carrier, freezing to death, like this, because the cold winter wind was blowing in, but he wanted them, to hear, even if they heard the sound of it, and the headlights, be showing what it's like when you drive through Scotland. You've got sleeping sheep, sleeping cattle, and he'd shout as loud as he could, even though he was so old and frail, that at least once in their life they'd heard the Om Mani Padme Hum. And when we went, if we went to the seaside, then he'd go and do prayers for the fishes and Om Mani Padme Hum for all the animals in the sea. And like I said earlier in the talk, he was the person the 16th Karmapa put in charge of Taisitupa and Shamapa and Jamgon Rinpoche and Gyaltsab Rinpoche as the person to turn to for spiritual guidance. So I do think this,
That is such a beautiful story. I love the idea of him, going through the night, shouting out the money. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's really, and he was such a frail old man. He was just skin and bones, and his health wasn't good. And he was doing it at the top of his voice for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was talking earlier about Ngondro and Lama Shang, who says the Ngondro, the foundation, is much more important than the actual practice, and needs to be proper. The Mahamudra foundations, Ngondro, special Ngondro, prostrations and Vajrasattva practice and so on, he'd done the whole set at least 11 times. So even though he was such a great master, he carried on doing it.
Ken, can I actually just quickly ask as well? I just completely forgot, but I have Om Mani Padme Hum. I have it tattooed on my arm. I actually have it. Do you see it there?
Yeah.
Do you see there? I've got Om Mani Padme Hum. That's the tattoo on my arm.
Mm-hmm.
Is that quite beneficial?
Well, of course, it reminds you of it all the time.
Yeah,
So
I completely forgot
good.
for a few years. Yeah.
I can't say I've ever heard a Buddhist teaching about tattoos, either from the lamas or in the sutras, or and having a tattoo done is well, it can be removed, but it's a serious step. But of course, it reminds you, and so much in Tibetan Buddhism is about reminders. Prayer flags, they're just pieces of cloth, with squiggles on them, if you look at them objectively. But when we see them, it reminds us of the wind carrying the message of whatever it is, and turning prayer wheels, keeps our fidgety hands busy with something that as you're doing it, it's reminding you. So Tibetans were very good at using triggers so you don't waste your moments in habitual thought, which is such a shallow and usually not helpful thing, time-wasting thing. At least you're doing sort of mechanical Buddhism, let's say, which is better than mechanical samsara, right? And then mechanical Buddhism can become a basis for very awakened Buddhism. Yakon Rinpoche used to say, people say, why do we have to do all these prayers? Isn't it simpler than that? Isn't it psychological? Why all the prayers, Rinpoche? And he'd say, well, as long as your mind is discursive, you need to do prayers. When your mind's not thinking all the time anymore, then you don't need to do prayers.
And could I just mention another mantra? A friend of mine sent me this one a while ago. It's like Jalsab Rinpoche. Did you ever hear of that one? It's called Hagan Ga, the Liberation Through Hearing Mantra. Haganga, Jalsab Rinpoche. And it says on it, like, it's on YouTube, but it says it's some connection to Guru Rinpoche. And he asked that it be disseminated, that beings, and I think it mentions insects as well.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. It's on, just monks chanting it.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of, all tantric practice has mantra, and in each of the tantras associated with the practice that it describes it, then it always tells you about the benefits, and some have special benefits for like living long or protecting places or helping animals. And this is why at the beginning of this text it says there are many tantras, many practices, but be assured that Om Mani Padme Hum contains them all. But then sometimes people connect with one practice for whatever reasons, usually past life reasons, and then like if it's Manjushri, then they see the image of Manjushri, or they hear the Omarapatsanadi mantra, and it works for them. Fantastic. Just leave it there. If it works, do it, really. So if there's one that speaks to you, or if there's one that Jalsab Rinpoche is such an amazing master. He's got everything going for him. Everything. I don't know of any Tibetan master more learned. I don't know of anyone who is a more powerful meditator. He is, he's my pin-up Lama, Jalsab Rinpoche. So if somebody who's so special for you,
He said it's
not
from
published yet. It's not published yet, but this is a book that I made with my friends, working on together. Some copies are distributed. I think they had 1,000 made for him to give away. So if somebody who's special for you like that gives you a practice, a mantra, and says, this is really good, then the connection, through you to the teacher, to the origins of the mantra and all the Buddha, it's like I was saying earlier on, when you connect up to internet, you've got a hotline that's really good.
It says it's like from another world. on the little YouTube video with the chanting, with Jalsa Rinpoche, he says it, and he says the mantra, and then he says that's, I think it says that's the transmission. If you hear it, whoever hears it, and he said it's from another world, like it's not from this world, the sound or something as well, and the connection to Guru Rinpoche.
Thank you. Okay, maybe that's us for today, and we're back again. What are we, the 16th? Yeah, we're back again next week. So have a wonderful week, and and if you can, come back to these teachings and think about them as you look at the evanescent ripples on the water. Okay.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Moon Day.
Thank
Oh.
you. Yes.
It's new moon, isn't it? So it's the beginning of Sakadawa. This is supposed to be it's the most sacred month for Tibetans. And they say everything is multiplied, good or bad, a lot. And it's the month where we celebrate lots of things.